I have paid all the taxes required by law. I don't pay more than are legally due. And frankly, if I had paid more than are legally due, I don't think I'd be qualified to become president.
If I had paid more than are legally due, I don't think I'd be qualified to become president, except for this special circumstance in which I'm paying more than is legally due because I would like to become president. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, the host of MSNBC's weekend morning show, Up with Chris Hayes. Chris's new book is called Twilight of the Elites, America After Meritocracy. Chris, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here.
The question that we will get to is the strategy of why now. We will get to that. But substantively, Mr. Romney paid more in taxes than he owed in order to make a statement to ABC News from earlier in the summer retroactively true about what he said his tax rate had been.
Here's my favorite part. This is a 3-act trilogy, right? Act 1 is he makes this promise, which it's unclear whether he could keep. Act 2 is that he pays, I think it's about an extra $225,000, which is a lot of money to people, not that much money to Mitt Romney, to make that statement true. Here's my favorite. He can file an amendment to the return after the election in which he claims that extra $1.6 million deduction and get the money back. So the best part of the denouement in all this is that when he's done and if he has lost, or even if he's won, he just goes back to the IRS, is like, oh, I'm amending my return. Actually, I do want to take that full deduction on that money.
The amazing thing will be if he wins.
Will he do that?
It would take to get it back. Also notable that Mitt Romney in 2008 gave his campaign, what did he spend? Tens of millions of dollars on his campaign in 2008. This time he's contributed essentially like $50,000 or something. Right. So this is a loan of $225,000 to his campaign. It's his biggest personal investment in his campaign yet.
I seriously am just so looking. I'm just that press release or that story about filing the amendment the day after the election. Because what's clear here is, and I think it's actually a really interesting set of questions, right? There's a question about what is morally acceptable. Like, forget the law, right? So as far as we know, we're in the four square corners of the law, right? But it's like, what do we find to be admirable behavior? What do we find to be morally neutral behavior vis-a-vis taxes? And what do we find condemnable? And I think the thing that I find condemnable about all this is that of those 340 pages of his tax returns, 225 are foreign vehicles that have been created, as far as we know, solely for the sole purpose to shelter tax income for the government. It's one thing to take the deductions you're due. I gave this much in charity, and I'm going to write all that off. Or I have the child tax credit. It is another to orient the entirety of your income streams, to engineer them from the beginning to try in the most exotic fashion possible to minimize your tax liability.
The Romney campaign line on that is, listen, yes, there's a lot of money in the Cayman Islands, but it's not there to avoid taxes.
It's just not plausible.
Right.
It's just not plausible.
Why would anything be incorporated
None of that is
in
possible.
the Cayman Islands?
And
it's not
I will
Cayman
tell you
Island
this.
businesses.
I have talked to people at Bain who have worked at Bain. And here's one thing they will tell you. Bain says to you when they are recruiting you, we structure these deals in ways that will minimize your tax liability. That is one of the pitches of Bain, right? You're going to keep an extra 10% of your income, which people like that, right? This is just part of the way it works.
This is also difficult for Mr. Romney, politically speaking, because of what else has happened about taxes this week. So obviously there's this hidden camera video in which he's talking about, in really morally disdainful terms, toward essentially the second-class citizenship of people who are not paying income taxes. Mr. Romney is by and large not paying income taxes because he doesn't have income. He hasn't had a paying job since 1999. So this is investment income, which isn't taxed as income, and in the same way that regular income is taxed. So how does this politically and morally, on that moral question, interact with the thing that he got caught on tape saying that it so embarrassed him this week?
It amplifies the bad message, because what it does is there is a vision that the right holds, that the right and conservative plutocrats hold, and some non-conservative plutocrats, I think plutocrats who consider themselves liberals, and Mitt Romney holds, which is that the nation is veering towards this point in which these kind of super beings who are the job creators, who are in some deep core metaphysical sense different than normal people, hold up all of society. And if you start attacking them with your petty slings and arrows, everything will fall down. This is a worldview that they have that I think Mitt Romney genuinely shares. And what we see is that when you're looking at the actual social contract, those same people who view themselves as the pillars of the society are welching on the social contract, are doing everything in their power to slither out of it, to get themselves out of those obligations. And this just reaffirms that.
And the idea also that it's inherent in the job creator idea, but also in the idea that the reason that people aren't paying income tax, things like the earned income tax credit, things like child tax deductions, things like deductions for education and mortgage interest and all these other things were created by the government as ways to encourage those behaviors that are rewarded in the tax code. If we're not challenging that, if we're not challenging that there ought to be a child tax deduction, then we ought not be damning people who collect it. And that is...
Particularly when it was Republican policy. Can I say one more very quick thing?
Yeah.
R. Brad Malt, he is the trustee for, that you showed his blog post talking about it. This is a reminder to everyone, when Mitt Romney says he has a blind trust, the man who runs his blind trust is his personal attorney. It is not a blind trust in any way that would be recognizable.
There's no veil of ignorance.
He's a guy that he has attorney-client privilege to, that he could go into the room and say, let's make sure we pay 14%. That is not a blind trust.
Chris Hayes, host of the MSNBC Weekend Morning Show. Up with Chris Hayes, the author of Twilight of the Elites. Chris, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your show tomorrow. Christy Vilsack?
Yes, Christy Vilsack.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting. Running against Steve King, right?
Yep.
Yeah, great. All right.